The morning sky over what remained of Washington, D.C. was an eerie gray, heavy with the promise of rain. Lieutenant Jackson Jax Miller stood on the crumbling rooftop of an old government building, peering through a pair of binoculars. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, Jax had long buried that emotion, but from exhaustion. Below him, streets once bustling with cars and laughter were now silent. Vehicles sat abandoned. Cracked pavement was littered with discarded belongings. The final countdown had begun. It had been 3 years since the outbreak. America, once a global powerhouse, was now a fractured land of fortified human pockets trying desperately to survive as waves of the undead roamed free. The zombies weren't mindless wanderers anymore, they had evolved, grown faster, more coordinated. Something was changing, and the survivors all felt it in their bones. Humanity was running out of time. Jax lowered the binoculars and turned to his team, who were crouched behind a makeshift barricade on the rooftop. Captain Sarah Lopez, sharp-eyed and always ready with a quick plan, Marcus, the brooding tech specialist, and Tyler, the youngest of them all, barely 19 but already hardened by the horrors of survival. They were part of Unit Echo, one of the last military survivor units tasked with scouting out threats and securing new safe zones. "Movement?" Sarah asked, brushing a strand of dirty blonde hair from her face. Jax gave a tight nod. "They're gathering near the Capitol ruins. Hundreds. Maybe more. But it's not just a swarm, they're organizing." Marcus let out a low whistle. "Since when do the dead organize?" "That's what worries me," Jax muttered. Below, near the rubble-strewn avenues, shapes stirred. The undead weren't charging mindlessly this time. They moved with purpose, staying just out of range, lurking, waiting. The way they formed clusters, the way they paced back and forth, it was as if they were strategizing. Tyler shivered. "You think they're learning?" Sarah's jaw tightened. "They're adapting. That's why Command wants us to track their movements. If they break through the sector, the safe zones further north are finished." Their earpieces crackled. "Echo Unit, this is Command. Report in." Jax pressed his finger to his comm command. "We have visual on enemy forces near the Capitol. Estimating over 300 undead. They appear to be regrouping." A moment of static. Then, "Hold your position. Reinforcements are en route. Under no circumstances are you to engage. Repeat, do not engage." Jax exchanged a glance with Sarah. "Copy that, Command." But even as he spoke, the uneasy feeling in his gut twisted tighter. Suddenly, Marcus swore under his breath. "Ah, guys?" They turned. Tyler pointed to the far edge of the rooftop. Shadows were creeping up the fire escape. Somehow, without making a sound, the undead had circled behind them. "How the hell?" Jax hissed, pulling his rifle around. "No time. Fall back inside." Sarah barked. They scrambled, diving through the rooftop door as the first of the undead reached the top. Hands clawed at the air, jaws snapped, and lifeless eyes burned with an unnatural hunger. Jax slammed the door shut, throwing the bolt across. "Marcus, can you seal the lower levels?" "I can try. But if they're already inside..." Bang. 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 The door shuddered under repeated impacts. The team backed away cautiously. "I thought they couldn't coordinate attacks like this," Tyler said, his voice shaking. "That's the problem," Jax replied grimly. "They didn't used to." In the flickering light of their flashlights, the hallways inside the building looked like a war zone. Papers and bullet casings littered the ground, walls were scarred from past skirmishes, and barricades had been hastily thrown up in places. Marcus pulled out his laptop, connecting it to the building's old security system. "If I can activate the old steel shutters on the lower levels, we can at least slow them down." "Do it," Jax ordered. Sarah kept her rifle trained on the door as it rattled violently. "We need an extraction plan. If they've surrounded the building, we're sitting ducks here." Jax pulled up a map. There was an old maintenance tunnel beneath the building, running under the streets and out toward the river. That tunnel's our only shot, he said. Bang! The rooftop door burst inward. Move! Sarah shouted. Gunfire echoed through the hallway as they fell back, each shot precise, each movement desperate. Tyler covered their retreat, shaking but determined. Marcus grinned as his fingers danced across the keyboard. Got it. Shutters dropping now. Heavy metal doors slammed shut on the lower floors, cutting off part of the swarm. But it wouldn't hold forever. Panting, they reached the entrance to the maintenance tunnels. Jax glanced back at the chaos behind them. This was supposed to be a recon mission, he muttered, half to himself. Sarah clapped him on the shoulder. Welcome to the new world, Lieutenant. As they slipped into the darkness of the tunnel, the sound of the undead pounding against the barricades echoed after them. Jax knew this was only the beginning. Something bigger was coming. Something no one was prepared for. The final countdown had begun. To be continued in Part 2. Let me know when you're ready, and I'll jump into Part 2W. The maintenance tunnel was cold, damp, and smelled like rust and rot. Jax led the way, his flashlight beam cutting through the thick darkness ahead. His boots crunched on the gravelly floor, each step echoing in the narrow space. Behind him, Sarah, Marcus, and Tyler followed closely, their breaths ragged from the rooftop escape. Keep quiet, Jax whispered, glancing over his shoulder. Sound carries down here. Sarah nodded, but Tyler was visibly trembling. He clutched his rifle so tightly his knuckles were white. Do you think they'll follow us down here? He asked, voice barely audible. Jax gave him a hard look. We have to assume they will. Marcus muttered under his breath. Great. Just great. First they flank us on the rooftop, now they're smart enough to chase us underground? What's next? Zombies learning to use weapons. Don't joke, Sarah warned sharply. We don't know how far their evolution's gone. They pressed forward. The tunnel was a maze of branching paths, rusted pipes overhead, and water dripping from cracks in the ceiling. Jax checked his handheld map, which flickered uncertainly with the weak signal. We head west, he said. If the tunnels haven't collapsed, they should spit us out near the river. Suddenly, a distant thud echoed behind them. Everyone froze. Another thud. Closer. Jax's heart pounded. Move, he hissed, quickening his pace. The team jogged through the tunnel, the sound of pursuit growing louder. They passed broken doors, collapsed side passages, and graffiti-covered walls. Then they reached a large junction where the tunnel split 3 ways. Jax hesitated, consulting his map again. But the device gave a soft beep, signal lost. Which way? Tyler asked, panic creeping into his voice. Jax clenched his jaw. West should be left. Should be? Marcus echoed, eyes wide. We don't have time to argue. Sarah snapped. Pick a path. Behind them, the first of the undead appeared at the tunnel's mouth, their pale forms crawling and jerking unnaturally through the tight space. Their eyes gleamed faintly in the flashlight beams. Left. Jax ordered. They bolted down the left corridor, feet splashing through shallow puddles. The air grew colder, the walls tighter. The pounding behind them intensified. Suddenly, the tunnel shook. A low rumble, then a burst of dust and debris rained from the ceiling. Cave in! Marcus yelled. The group dove forward as part of the tunnel collapsed behind them, cutting off a portion of the pursuing horde. But it didn't stop all of them. A few had made it through, shrieking with feral determination. Jax whipped around, raising his rifle. We hold them here. The team formed a line, firing in controlled bursts. Tyler's hands shook as he squeezed the trigger, but he hit his marks. Sarah's shots were clean and efficient, while Marcus provided cover fire with his sidearm. Bodies fell, but the undead kept coming. Fall back. Jax barked. They raced deeper into the tunnel, lungs burning, minds racing. The path twisted and turned until they reached an old maintenance door. Jax slammed his shoulder into it, it didn't budge. Help me, he shouted. Sarah and Marcus joined him, and together they forced the rusted door open. Beyond it lay a narrow service stairwell leading upward. "Go!" Jax urged, shoving Tyler through first. The young soldier scrambled up the steps, followed by Marcus and Sarah. Jax held the door as long as he could, then slipped through, slamming it shut behind him. The stairwell groaned under their weight as they ascended, the sound of the undead growing fainter below. At the top, they emerged into a dimly lit storage area, a place untouched for years. Dust coated the shelves, and old crates were stacked haphazardly. A faint glow seeped through cracked windows, hinting at the outside world. "We made it," Tyler gasped, collapsing onto the floor. "For now," Jax said grimly. He walked to the window, peering outside. They were just a few blocks from the river. But something caught his eye, a faint glow on the horizon, a flicker of distant firelight. "What's that?" Sarah asked, joining him. Jax's brow furrowed. "Could be a survivor camp, or something else." Marcus approached, tapping at his tablet. "I'm picking up faint radio signals, unidentified. Could be military, could be civilian." Jax exhaled slowly. "We need to make contact. If there's any chance of backup, we need to take it." But even as he spoke, he couldn't shake the growing sense of dread. The undead weren't supposed to be this coordinated. Their pursuit wasn't random. It was calculated. Something, or someone, was driving them. And whatever that force was, Jax feared they were only seeing the beginning of its power. He turned to his team, eyes hard. "We move at dawn. Rest while you can. Tomorrow, we find out who's left, and what we're really up against." Outside, in the ruined city, the final countdown ticked on. To be continued in Part 3. Let me know when you want Part 3. As the first pale light of dawn crept through the cracked window, Jax rose silently. His back ached from sleeping on the cold concrete floor, but his mind was sharper than ever. He surveyed the room. The storage area was still, the air thick with dust. Sarah was already awake, sitting against a crate with her rifle across her lap. She gave him a tired nod. "Didn't sleep much," she murmured. "Me neither," Jax replied. He moved to the window, peering outside. The ruined city stretched out before them, a graveyard of fallen buildings and twisted metal. Smoke drifted lazily from the fires they'd seen in the distance. Somewhere out there, people were either surviving or burning. Marcus stirred next, stretching and muttering under his breath. Tyler remained curled up in the corner, snoring softly. Jax let him sleep a moment longer. The kid had proven himself last night, despite the panic. But they'd need him sharp today. Marcus flicked on his tablet, frowning. "That faint radio signal from last night, it's stronger now." Jax's ears perked up. "Military?" "Unclear," Marcus said. "Encrypted, but the signature doesn't match any known military bands." Sarah joined them. "If there's a signal, there's a sender. We should move before they shut it down." Jax nodded. "Wake Tyler. We go in 5. By the time they stepped into the daylight, the city felt eerily quiet. The streets were littered with abandoned vehicles, scattered supplies, and the occasional ghastly reminder of what the undead had done, though Jax tried not to let his eyes linger too long. They stuck to the shadows, weaving between alleys and broken fences. The signal led them west, toward the river. As they approached a crumbling overpass, Tyler paused, his expression tight. "You hear that?" The group froze. Soft, faint sounds, whispers. Jax raised a fist, signaling everyone to crouch. He strained his ears. The whispers floated on the wind, ghostly and thin, like voices just out of reach. But no one was speaking. "Not human," Sarah murmured. Suddenly, Marcus's tablet crackled, the signal pulsing sharply. A cold sweat broke over Jax's neck. "Move. Now." They sprinted under the overpass just as a cluster of figures emerged on the far side, not staggering, mindless zombies, but something more. These creatures moved with unnerving coordination, their heads tilting as if they were listening. The whispers intensified. Sarah gripped Jax's arm. They're communicating. Jax's stomach turned. How? They're dead. But as they watched, one of the creatures raised a hand, an unmistakable signal, and the others fanned out, scanning the area. Flanking positions, Marcus muttered in disbelief. This isn't random hunting. This is strategy. Jax clenched his jaw. Fall back. We can't fight what we don't understand. They slipped through a narrow side street, ducking under collapsed scaffolding and past the remains of an old storefront. Tyler struggled to keep up, his breathing ragged. Wait, he gasped. Listen. Jax halted. The whispers were gone. For a second, there was only the sound of their own breathing, the soft rustle of the wind. Then, crack. A shot rang out, striking the ground near Jax's feet. Sniper! Sarah shouted, diving for cover. More shots echoed, shattering nearby windows. Jax dragged Tyler behind a dumpster, heart hammering. Where's it coming from? Marcus squinted up at a nearby rooftop. Top right, second building. Jax risked a glance. Sure enough, a figure crouched on the roof, rifle trained on them. But it wasn't a human sniper. Its movements were jerky, unnatural, like a puppet on strings. Is that? Tyler began, eyes wide. It's one of them, Jax confirmed grimly. They're learning to use weapons. Before they could react, a low, rumbling roar rose from behind. Jax's blood ran cold. More of the coordinated undead were closing in, cutting off their escape. Marcus, smoke grenade, now! Jax barked. Marcus fumbled in his pack, yanking free a small canister and pulling the pin. He hurled it toward the approaching horde. Thick white smoke billowed out, obscuring the street. Go! Jax shouted. The team dashed through the cloud, coughing but grateful for the cover. They sprinted west, toward the river, hearts pounding. Finally, they burst out of the smoke and stumbled onto the riverbank, gasping for breath. Across the water, they saw it, a small encampment, faintly glowing with fires, people moving between tents and barricades. Survivors, Sarah breathed. Relief flooded Jax's chest, but only for a moment. Behind them, the whispers rose again, louder now, almost taunting. Jax turned, eyes narrowing. The countdown had started, and the enemy was evolving faster than they'd ever feared. He looked at his team. We cross the river. We warn them. We prepare. Sarah raised her rifle. Or we die trying. Jax gave a grim nod. Either way, the final countdown has begun. To be continued in Part 4. Let me know when you're ready for Part 4. Jax's heart pounded in his chest as the group stood at the river's edge, staring across the choppy, cold water. The glow of campfires and the faint silhouettes of people beyond the far bank filled them with desperate hope. But behind them, the whispers grew louder, closer, those eerie, unnatural voices that didn't belong to anything human anymore. Can we swim it? Tyler asked breathlessly, wiping sweat from his brow. Marcus shook his head, eyes wide. Current's too strong. We'll be swept downstream before we're halfway across. Jax scanned the shoreline, brain racing. There, an old, half-collapsed footbridge, about 100 meters upriver. Rusted cables, sagging planks, but still standing. Barely. We take the bridge, Jax decided. Fast and quiet. Sarah frowned, tightening her grip on her rifle. If it holds. We don't have a choice, Jax said grimly. Behind them, dark shapes emerged from the smoke, the undead scouts advancing steadily, their heads cocked unnaturally as if listening for vibrations or scents. Jax swore under his breath. They couldn't waste a second. Move, he hissed, taking off at a sprint. They raced along the riverbank, the bridge groaning and creaking as the wind swept across it. Up close, it looked even worse, some sections were missing entirely, and the remaining planks were soft and waterlogged. Marcus cursed. We're trusting our lives to this? First across covers the others, Jax ordered, waving Sarah forward. Without hesitation, Sarah leapt onto the bridge, moving swiftly and lightly, her eyes fixed on the far side. Every step made the old wood shudder. Jax followed next, motioning for Tyler and Marcus to stay close. The river roared below them, swollen with rain and debris. Jax felt the bridge sway under his weight, each footstep a test of balance. He could hear the horde's whispers growing, feel their presence like cold fingers creeping up his spine. Halfway across, Sarah froze. "Jax," she whispered urgently, "look." Jax's eyes followed her gaze. Ahead, on the far bank, the camp was stirring, but not with the relief of welcoming fellow survivors. Figures moved stiffly, jerkily, their heads twitching unnaturally. Jax's heart sank. "They're infected." Tyler, just behind, gasped. "No, they're everywhere." From the far side, the infected campers turned, locking onto the group on the bridge. Simultaneously, the creatures behind them reached the bridge entrance, claws scraping against the rusted cables. "Trapped." Marcus's eyes darted wildly. "We're surrounded." Jax clenched his fists. "No. We fight." He turned sharply. "Sarah, cover the front. Marcus, Tyler, hold the rear with me." They spun, weapons raised, as the first wave of infected clambered onto the bridge. These weren't slow, shambling monsters. They were fast, terrifyingly fast. Climbing, leaping, crawling like rabid animals. Tyler fired wildly, his hands shaking, as Marcus laid down controlled bursts. Sarah snapped off precise shots ahead, keeping the front line at bay. Jax plunged his knife into a snarling attacker that had reached the center of the bridge, grunting as its weight slammed into him. Another creature lunged, Jax ducked and shoved it over the railing, where it plunged screaming into the river. But for every one they took down, two more appeared. "Jax, the bridge won't hold!" Marcus shouted. The wood beneath their feet groaned ominously, a deep, shuddering crack splitting through the planks. Jax's mind raced. They couldn't retreat, and the far side was overrun. Then he saw it, a small maintenance boat tied beneath the bridge, half hidden by debris. If they could reach it, they could push downstream and away from the immediate threat. "Down!" Jax yelled. "We drop to the boat, now!" Sarah shot him a sharp look. "You sure?" "Not even a little," Jax growled. Without waiting, he leapt onto the side cable, swinging himself down. The metal groaned under his weight, but he managed to drop to the boat's deck with a thud. "Come on," he roared. Sarah followed, then Marcus. Tyler hesitated, panicking as the bridge above him buckled. "Tyler!" Jax shouted, reaching up. With a terrified cry, Tyler flung himself over the edge, landing hard in Jax's arms. They crashed onto the boat's floor, groaning in pain. Above, the bridge cracked and collapsed, sending undead tumbling into the water with horrible shrieks. Jax scrambled to untie the rope. "Push us off." Marcus and Sarah shoved the boat free as Jax grabbed a broken paddle. The current seized them instantly, pulling them away from the collapsing bridge, away from the snarling monsters on both shores. For a moment, they drifted in stunned silence, watching the burning city and the ruined camp fade behind them. Sarah exhaled shakily. That was too close. Jax's jaw clenched as he stared at the dark horizon ahead. "We're not safe yet." The river twisted into unknown territory, and somewhere beyond, the whispers still echoed, waiting. The night deepened as the small boat drifted downstream, the moonlight glinting off the rippling water. Jax clutched the broken paddle, trying to steer them away from floating debris while Marcus and Sarah kept watch. Tyler sat at the front, hugging his knees, his face pale and distant. No one spoke for a long time. The adrenaline that had carried them through the bridge collapse was fading, replaced by bone-deep exhaustion. "We can't drift forever," Marcus murmured, scanning the shorelines. "Where are we even going?" Jax's eyes narrowed. "We follow the river until we find cover. Somewhere they can't track us." Sarah shifted uncomfortably. The river's leading into the marshlands. That place is a death trap, Jax. Even before all this. Jax grunted. You'd rather turn back? She sighed, shaking her head. No. The boat rocked gently as it glided into darker, narrower channels, where overhanging trees cast deep shadows across the water. Thick vines dangled like skeletal fingers, and strange shapes twisted in the mist. Tyler shivered. I don't like this, he whispered. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed through the night, a gunshot. The group stiffened, ducking low instinctively. Another shot rang out, followed by harsh yelling from deeper in the swamp. Did you hear that? Marcus hissed. Jax nodded, signaling for silence. Carefully, he guided the boat toward the shore, beaching it behind a cluster of reeds. The force slipped out, weapons drawn, their footsteps muffled by the soggy ground. As they crept closer, the sounds sharpened, the unmistakable snap of gunfire, the wet smack of claws against flesh, and desperate human voices calling out for help. Survivors, Sarah whispered. Jax frowned. Or bait. They edged forward through the tangled undergrowth, their eyes straining in the darkness. Ahead, a crude wooden barricade had been set up in the middle of a marsh clearing, surrounded by knee-deep water. Several figures were crouched behind it, firing wildly at a swarm of infected clawing at the edges. Hold them off, a woman's voice shouted from inside the barricade. Jax's fists tightened. They could slip away, or they could help. Marcus leaned close. We're already stretched thin, Jax. We can't save everyone. I know, Jax muttered. But we're not leaving them. Without another word, he broke from cover, firing at the nearest infected. Sarah and Marcus followed, picking off targets with precise shots. Tyler hesitated, then raised his own weapon with shaking hands, adding to the chaos. Inside the barricade, the strangers turned in surprise as the newcomers joined the fight. One of them, a tall woman with cropped hair, barked an order. Who the hell are you? Friendly. Jax shouted back. Hold the line. The battle was fast and brutal. The swamp slowed the infected's movements, but their numbers kept building, bodies crawling over each other to reach the barricade. Jax slammed a heavy branch into an advancing figure, sending it splashing into the water. Sarah's rifle jammed, forcing her to switch to her knife. Tyler accidentally dropped his pistol, panicking as a snarling face lunged toward him, only for Marcus to shoot it cleanly from behind. Finally, the last of the creatures fell, twitching in the mud. Breathing hard, Jax approached the barricade, where the strangers were reloading weapons and tending to wounds. The tall woman stepped forward, eyeing him warily. I'm Reese, she said bluntly. Leader here. You just saved our lives. Jax nodded. Jax. We're passing through. Reese raised an eyebrow. Passing through the swamp? That's suicide. Sarah snorted softly. Tell me about it. Reese's gaze softened slightly. Well, you've got two choices now, stick with us, or try your luck out there alone. But I'll warn you, there's something worse coming. Jax's stomach tightened. Worse than this? Reese exchanged a grim look with her people. We've been watching them, adapting. Learning. Coordinating attacks. She lowered her voice. We've got scouts who swear they saw one of them leading the others. Giving orders. Jax's mouth went dry. That was impossible, wasn't it? He looked at Sarah, Marcus, and Tyler, all of them silently waiting for his decision. We can't stay here long, he said firmly. We need to move, find higher ground, maybe even reconnect with Central Command. Reese shook her head. Command's gone. Last we heard, Dead America's final holdouts are falling, one by one. In the countdown, she trailed off. It's almost over. Jax clenched his fists. He'd known things were bad. But hearing it from someone else, someone who'd been tracking the fall, made it feel real. All right, he said quietly. We help each other. We move together. Reese gave a sharp nod. We'll leave at first light. As the group settled down to rest, Jax sat apart, staring into the darkness. Somewhere beyond the trees, something was stirring, something more dangerous, more cunning. They had survived this night. But Jax knew the real fight hadn't even begun. Morning never truly came in the swamp. A heavy mist clung to the trees, muting the rising sun into a pale blur. Jax woke with a start, his hand instinctively going to the knife at his belt. For a moment, he'd forgotten where they were, until the smell of damp mud and the quiet murmurs of Reese's group pulled him back. Sarah crouched nearby, packing supplies into an old canvas bag. She gave him a quick nod. You didn't sleep much. Neither did you, Jax replied, stretching his stiff muscles. Tyler shuffled over, eyes puffy, still shaken from last night's fight. Are we really going with them? Marcus joined, adjusting the strap of his rifle. We don't have much choice, kid. Alone, we won't last a day in this swamp. Reese appeared, her sharp eyes scanning the treetops. Glad you're all up. We move now, stay close, keep quiet. Jax stepped beside her as they started moving. Where exactly are we headed? Reese's lips tightened. There's an old ranger station deeper in. High ground, secure walls, good sight lines. If anything's left of dead America's communications, we'll find it there. The group trudged through ankle-deep water, pushing past tangled roots and rotting branches. The swamp was eerily silent, no birdsong, no insects, just the occasional creak of shifting trees. Hours passed, tension simmering under every step. Tyler kept glancing over his shoulder, and even Marcus seemed on edge. Sarah leaned in close to Jax. Doesn't it feel too quiet? He nodded grimly. They're watching. Suddenly, Reese raised a hand, signaling them to stop. Everyone froze. From ahead came the faintest sound, a wet, dragging shuffle. Jax squinted through the mist, heart pounding. Shadows moved between the trees, but they weren't mindless infected. These figures moved with purpose, ducking low, weaving between cover. Hunters, Reese whispered. Not like the others. Before anyone could respond, a sharp whistle caught through the air, and chaos erupted. Figures lunged from the fog, snarling, teeth bared, eyes burning with a strange intelligence. These weren't the usual infected, they were faster, coordinated. One slammed into Marcus, knocking him into the mud. Tyler screamed as another lunged for him, only for Sarah to tackle it, driving her knife deep into its chest. Jax fired blindly, the crack of his pistol echoing in the trees. Reese's people fought back fiercely, but the ambush had them pinned. Fall back! Reese shouted. To the rocks! Jax grabbed Marcus by the collar, hauling him upright, and the group sprinted toward a cluster of jagged boulders jutting from the swamp. Behind them, the creatures gave chase, their movements disturbingly precise. Reaching the rocks, Reese spun, covering the retreat with a burst of gunfire. Jax ducked behind a stone, gasping for breath, as the others scrambled into defensive positions. What are these things? Tyler sobbed, clutching his side. Jax shook his head, eyes wide. They're evolving. Reese knelt beside him, her face pale. We've seen them before, they're like pack leaders. They control the hordes, drive them where they want. Marcus cursed under his breath. Then why haven't they overrun us yet? Reese met his gaze. Because they're testing us. The realization hit Jax like a blow. This wasn't just another random attack. This was a hunt, and they were the prey. For a tense hour, the group held their ground, fending off small probing attacks. Every time one of the hunters darted too close, Reese or Jax would drive it back with a shot or a blade. But they knew it couldn't last forever. Finally, the creatures withdrew, melting into the trees. The silence returned, heavier than before. We can't stay here, Jax muttered. Reese nodded grimly. They're pushing us toward something. The group regrouped, tending to scrapes and checking ammo. Tyler's hands trembled as he refilled his pistol's magazine. Sarah gave him a quick squeeze on the shoulder. You did good, kid. Jax climbed to the top of the rocks, scanning the swamp. In the distance, he spotted the faint outline of the ranger station, its watchtower barely visible through the mist. Relief surged in his chest. There, he called down. That's our shot. Reese joined him, her eyes narrowing. If we make it. Jax turned to her. We will. As they prepared to move, a distant, low roar echoed through the swamp, something deep, guttural, inhuman. The sound chilled them to the bone. What was that? Marcus asked softly. Reese's face was tight with fear. That's what's waiting at the station. Jax clenched his fists, a surge of determination burning through his exhaustion. If Dead America was going to make its final stand, it would be there, and they would be ready. To be continued in Part 7. Want me to continue with Part 7? Just say the word. The ranger station stood like a ghost from the past, half hidden behind thick trees and coiling mist. Its old stone walls were weathered, the watchtower tilted slightly, but to Jax, it looked like salvation. He led the group through the last stretch of swamp, the ground sucking at their boots with every step. Reese moved ahead, rifle raised, eyes darting from shadow to shadow. Sarah and Marcus flanked the younger survivors, keeping them tight in the middle. Tyler stumbled once, exhaustion pulling at his small frame, but Sarah caught him quickly. You're almost there, kid, she whispered. Stay with me. The distant roar they'd heard earlier had faded, but none of them believed it was gone. If anything, the silence pressing in around them now felt worse, as if the swamp was holding its breath, waiting. Jax's heart pounded as they reached the perimeter fence. Rusted and sagging, it looked like it would barely hold back a squirrel, let alone the horrors they faced. Reese gave it a once-over and motioned to a side gate. In here, she murmured. They slipped inside, weapons drawn. The courtyard was littered with debris, old barrels, broken tools, rotting crates. Faint claw marks gouged the stone walls, a grim reminder of past attacks. Jax scanned the windows, half expecting to see one of those intelligent infected peering out. But there was only darkness. Up the tower, Reese ordered. We need to see what's coming. The group hurried inside, boots echoing softly on worn floorboards. The interior smelled of mold and old ash. Marcus found a rusted lantern and coaxed a small flame from it, casting long flickering shadows. They climbed the narrow stairs, Jax's pulse quickening with every creak of the wood. At the top, the watchtower's observation room gave them a commanding view of the swamp. Jax sucked in a sharp breath. Below, the trees were shifting, but not from the wind. Hundreds of infected filled the swamp's edge, their pale shapes writhing, gathering, pressing forward in eerie silence. And among them, towering shapes moved with deliberate purpose, the hunters, the pack leaders. But even they seemed hesitant, hanging back, as if waiting for something worse to arrive. What are they doing? Marcus whispered, tightening his grip on his rifle. Reese's jaw clenched. They're not attacking yet. They're surrounding. Jax's eyes were drawn to a darker shape near the rear of the horde, a silhouette almost twice the size of the hunters. Its movements were slower, more deliberate, a massive, hulking infected unlike any they'd seen before. What is that? Sarah breathed. Reese exhaled shakily. We call it the maw. The room fell silent. It leads them, Reese continued softly. It controls the packs, directs the herds. Wherever it goes, the infected organize. Think. Hunt smarter. Jax felt the weight of her words settle like a stone in his stomach. This wasn't just another fight, this was the apex predator of Dead America's collapse. Suddenly, a sharp noise crackled through the room, static. Jax whipped around, eyes landing on an old radio unit tucked in the corner, its faded screen flickering weakly. Reese rushed over, twisting knobs, slapping the side of the machine. Come on, she muttered. The static cleared slightly, and a faint, garbled voice came through. Sector 4, survivors, hold position. Jax leaned in. Did you hear that? There are others. Reese nodded grimly. They're coordinating defenses. we're not alone. The brief hope sparked something in the group. For the first time in days, they weren't just running, they had a chance to stand, to fight back, to be part of something bigger. Outside, the infected began to stir, their quiet stillness breaking into agitation. The maw shifted, lifting its massive head. "They're coming," Sarah said softly, her fingers tightening on her weapon. Reese turned to the group, her voice low but firm. "We hold the tower. We survive until dawn. And when the sun rises, we join the others and take the fight back to them." Jax nodded, his fear hardening into determination. Tyler stepped closer, his small face pale but set. "I want to help." Marcus clapped a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You will, kid. We all will." As they spread out across the tower, preparing defenses, the first shrieks echoed up from below, the hunters rallying the horde. Jax took one last look at the rising moon, drawing a deep breath. This was it. Dead America's final countdown had begun. And they weren't about to go quietly. To be continued in Part 8. The first impact hit just after midnight. Jax nearly lost his balance as the whole tower shook. Below, the infected had slammed into the base of the old ranger station, their claws scraping against stone, their distorted shrieks filling the air. Reese barked orders, positioning Marcus and Sarah at the windows while Jax kept Tyler close. "Stay behind me," Jax whispered to the boy, heart hammering. Reese aimed her rifle through a narrow slit in the wall. "Pick your shots. We can't waste ammo." The infected pressed forward like a rising tide. At first, it was the usual ones, shambling figures, twisted limbs, hungry eyes. But then the hunters arrived, tall and agile, leaping across the ruined courtyard, coordinating the attack. Jack saw one skitter up the sidewall like a spider, its long arms reaching for the second-floor window. Sarah fired. The creature shrieked, fell, and was swallowed by the mass below. Tyler flinched at the noise, but Jack steadied him. "You're doing great, kid. Just stay down." The old walls groaned under the weight. Reese cursed under her breath. "They're testing the structure. They want to bring the whole place down." Jax felt a wave of cold dread. "They're learning." Outside, the maw watched, its massive shape looming just beyond the treeline. It hadn't joined the attack yet, but Jax could feel its presence, like a dark intelligence guiding the chaos. Suddenly, the radio crackled again. "Tower team, come in." "Repeat, tower team, do you copy?" Reese snatched up the receiver. "This is Reese at Ranger Tower 3. We're surrounded. Holding for now, but not sure how long we can last." The voice on the other end was sharp, military, urgent. "Reese, this is command at Fort Lockridge. We're coordinating an extraction at dawn. You need to hold that tower until sunrise. Can you do that?" Reese hesitated, then nodded. "We'll hold." Jax caught her eye. "Extraction?" She gave a tight smile. "We've got backup coming, but only if we live long enough to see it." The minutes dragged on like hours. Each wave of infected tested their defenses. Marcus rigged barricades from overturned furniture. Sarah ran between firing points, shouting warnings. Reese stayed calm, picking off the most dangerous attackers with careful shots. But Jack saw the fatigue setting in. Sarah's hands trembled. Marcus was down to his last clip. Reese's voice was raw from shouting. And then the tower shook again, this time harder. Jax rushed to the window. His blood ran cold. The maw was moving. With slow, deliberate steps, the monstrous figure crossed the courtyard. Its pale flesh was stretched tight over thick muscle, its massive arms ending in claws meant for tearing through steel. "It's coming," Jax whispered. Reese grabbed the radio. "Command, we've got a new problem, the maw is advancing." The voice crackled back. "Hold your ground." "Repeat, hold your ground." "Extraction ETA, 4 hours." 4 hours. Jax's stomach twisted. Could they survive 4 more hours against this? The maw reached the base of the tower. It raised one massive arm and slammed it into the wall. The entire structure groaned, dust raining from the ceiling. Another hit, a crack split the stone near the window. Sarah's eyes widened. It's going to bring the whole place down. Reese's jaw clenched. We fall back to the basement. Reinforce the trapdoor. It's our only shot. Together, they scrambled down the stairs, hurting the younger survivors ahead. Marcus stayed at the rear, blasting one last hunter off the staircase before slamming the heavy door shut. In the basement, the air was damp and cold. The group clustered together, piling crates and furniture against the wooden hatch above. We hold here, Reese said quietly. No matter what happens, we hold. The sounds from above grew louder, crashing, splintering, the snarls of the infected blending into a relentless, hungry chorus. Jax pulled Tyler close, feeling the boy's small body shaking against him. Hey, Jax whispered, forcing a smile, remember what you said? You wanted to help. You're helping right now. You're staying brave. Tyler nodded, tears glistening in his wide eyes. Hours stretched on. The walls trembled. Dust and pebbles rained from the ceiling. At one point, part of the upper floor collapsed, sending a deafening crash through the space, but the basement held. Barely. Finally, just when Jax thought they couldn't last another second, a sound cut through the chaos. The rumble of engines. The sharp crack of gunfire, but not from inside. From outside. Reese's eyes snapped open. She grabbed the radio. Command. Is that you? Tower team, this is Fort Lockridge Strike Squad. We've arrived. Hold your position, we're breaching. Jax felt a surge of exhausted relief. They had survived the night. But as the trapdoor shook under another heavy impact, he knew the fight wasn't over yet. Because Dead America wasn't done with them. To be continued in Part 9. Want me to jump into Part 9? Let me know. The trapdoor above their heads rattled violently. Jax braced his body against it, sweat running down his face, heart thudding so loud he could barely hear Reese on the radio. Fort Lockridge, we're pinned in the basement. Reese's voice cracked with desperation. The maw is right above us, you have to hit it hard, or we're not making it out alive. From outside, the muffled sound of machine guns roared, cutting through the shrieks of the infected. Explosions echoed, sending tremors through the earth. Tyler whimpered, clutching Jax's arm. It's okay, buddy, Jax whispered. Help's here. But even as he said it, he saw Reese's pale, tense face. The maw wasn't just another infected. This thing was a monster that shrugged off bullets and tore through walls. Suddenly, there was a deep, guttural howl from above, so loud the walls shook and the survivors flinched. The maw had been hit, but it wasn't going down easily. We need to get out before this whole place collapses. Sarah shouted, shoving crates aside. Reese's voice was sharp. We hold the door until they clear the outside. If we open it too soon, they'll swarm in here and we'll be buried alive. The radio crackled again. Reese, this is Commander Allen. We've got the maw's attention. We're lighting it up with everything we've got. On my signal, get your people topside and run. Reese's eyes darted around the basement, counting heads. Jax, Sarah, Marcus, Tyler, all here. They were filthy, exhausted, bleeding in some places, but still breathing. The walls trembled again, this time from controlled demolitions outside. The strike squad was trying to blast open a path. Suddenly, Reese's radio blared, now, Reese, move. Without hesitation, Reese grabbed the trapdoor and heaved it open. Jax scrambled up first, pulling Tyler behind him. Smoke stung his eyes as he emerged into a war zone. Searchlights blazed across the ruined courtyard, soldiers in armored gear shouting commands as they poured suppressive fire into the charging infected. And towering at the center, roaring in fury, was the maw. The creature had taken damage, its pale skin shredded by heavy rounds, parts of its body scorched from explosives, but it was still standing. And when it saw Jax and the others appear from the basement, it let out a guttural snarl, lunging forward. "Go, go, go!" Reese bellowed. Jax grabbed Tyler and ran, weaving between fallen beams and rubble. Marcus stayed close behind, dragging Sarah, who was limping badly. Reese covered their retreat, firing controlled bursts at the Maw's legs, trying to slow it. "Left flank, hit it!" Commander Allen roared. Soldiers with rocket launchers fired in unison. The blasts hit the Maw's side, making it stumble, bellowing in rage. But it wasn't down. Not yet. Jax ducked behind a burned-out truck, clutching Tyler close. "We're not going to outrun that thing," he gasped. Reese dropped beside him, breathing hard. "We don't have to. We just have to hold long enough for the last strike." Jax's eyes widened. "Last strike?" As if in answer, the radio crackled. "This is Fort Lockridge Command. Target is marked. Airstrike inbound. Get clear, I repeat, get clear." Reese's face went pale. "Everyone move." The team scrambled, racing for the edge of the clearing. The Maw, sensing the shift, let out a roar and barreled after them, shoving through burning wreckage, its claws tearing into the ground. Jax tripped, nearly falling as Tyler pulled on his arm. Reese yanked them both up, pushing them forward. Suddenly, the ground shook, not from the Maw, but from above. Jax glanced up just in time to see the jet streak across the night sky, releasing its payload. "Get down!" Reese screamed. The world erupted in light and fire. The airstrike hit squarely on the Maw, the blast wave flattening everything in its radius. Jax threw himself over Tyler as the shockwave tore past them, debris raining down like hail. For a few heart-stopping seconds, there was nothing but roaring noise, heat, and blinding light. And then, silence. Slowly, Jax lifted his head. Smoke drifted across the courtyard. The tower was gone, reduced to rubble. Fires crackled in the distance. And the Maw. Jax's eyes locked on the massive crater where the creature had stood. There was no movement. No snarl. Just stillness. Commander Allen jogged over, helmet off, sweat streaking his face. "You made it," he said grimly. "We weren't sure you'd hold." Reese gave a tired smile. "We held." Jax squeezed Tyler's shoulder gently. "We made it, buddy. We're still here." But as the survivors gathered, as soldiers secured the perimeter, Jax couldn't shake the feeling crawling up his spine. Because Dead America wasn't over. And the final countdown had only just begun. To be continued in Part 10. Ready for the final part? Let me know. The dawn was heavy with silence. The once raging battleground now lay in eerie stillness, broken only by distant moans and the crackling of dying fires. Jax stood amid the rubble where the tower had stood, now a shattered memory in a broken land. Tyler clung tightly to his hand, eyes wide with exhaustion but alive. Around them, the surviving members of their group and the Fort Lockridge strike squad gathered, faces smeared with grime and fatigue, but alive. For the first time in weeks, there was a glimmer of hope. Commander Allen scanned the horizon, voice low but steady. "We've dealt a heavy blow tonight. The Maw is gone. For now." Reese tightened her grip on her rifle. "For now means it could come back." Jax nodded, the weight of every battle, every loss, pressing down on him. "It's not just the Maw," he said quietly. "There are others out there. More dangerous things we don't understand yet." Sarah, still limping, stared toward the distant city ruins. Dead America isn't dead yet. It's alive. And it's fighting back. Marcus cracked his knuckles, eyes fierce. "Then we fight back too. We have to. For those who can't." Jax looked at each of them, survivors forged in fire, bound by loss and desperate hope. "This isn't the end. It's the start of a new fight. One where we decide if humanity survives." Tyler tugged his sleeve. "Are we going to win?" Jax knelt down, meeting the boy's eyes. "We have to. Because if we don't, there won't be a tomorrow to fight for." The sun crested the horizon, casting long shadows over the wasteland. Dead America's final countdown wasn't over, it was just beginning. But this time, humanity would hold its ground. The end. If you want, I can help with expanding or tweaking any part or creating a summary for your video.